Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and of course, Infogalactic News. So, I was very amused to see the release. Actually, it wasn't the release, it was released some time ago, but nobody had really paid attention to it before Slashdot got a hold of the story. But I was very amused to see what is, at long last, a proper code of conduct being released in the technology communities. Before we get into that, though, I want to know if you can hear me okay. Volume's a bit low. Okay, actually, we can turn it up here. How's that? I've actually had this mic for years and years. But originally the interface I had didn't work very well with Windows 10, but decided after the Voxiversity Foundation meeting that it was time to seriously up our production game. So we're going to do that. We're going to continue to do that. And, right now, audio only comes through in the left ear. Well, you might have to check your system. It's all in one speaker. Well, this is mono, so we'll have to look into that. But I haven't really spent much time playing with this. I just basically dug the mic out, hooked it up to the Scarlett, and fired it up. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out why it. Some of you are saying they hear it in both ears, others no. So it's possible that it's something on your end. Anyhow, interesting. So if anyone's gotten any ideas about why some people are getting mono in both speakers and some in only the one, that's that. So anyhow, we'll look into it later. Let me see if there's any obvious switch here that can be thrown. Digital monitor, no. Line instrument, no. Yeah, well, we'll just have to look into it later. But there's nothing obvious on the interface. So we'll you can stop telling me that it's in your ear, whether it's in both ears or one ear. We've covered that, so let's not get caught up on that. We'll work on it and see about fixing it in the future. So, getting back to the code of conduct, I have been warning about the dangers of codes of conduct since I wrote about them in detail in SJWs Always Lie. And I may have even made a reference to them in SJWs Always Double Down. I may have even made a reference to them in SJWs Always Lie. Certainly it has always been very obvious to me that they were intended as a means of allowing SJWs to take control of the project and to eliminate those people who refuse to submit to the SJW narrative or to SJW objectives. Remember, social justice requires the convergence of all individuals and all institutions. So it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a company, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a social organization, it doesn't matter if you're talking about an open source project where people are coming together. Apparently I did reference the code of conduct problem in SJWs Always Lie, talking about the Go code of conduct. So what are we to do? Well, here's the thing. On the one hand, you can try to play a defensive game and trust that your benevolent dictator is going to be strong enough to resist the pressure. Unfortunately, we've now seen that that is not a viable option. We've already seen even the great Linus Torvalds cucking and submitting to SJW pressure. He resisted it for a long time, but he just couldn't take it anymore. And, we don't know exactly why. It doesn't matter why. The point is that you cannot put your trust in individuals. So there have been a number of different attempts to do this. Some take a more lighthearted attempt or a lighthearted approach. Others take a very sort of straight-faced technology approach. The Code of Merit is that Robert Rosario created is one example, and that's fine. That can work. But I think what is much better is to accept the principle that has been established by the SJWs. They have established once and for all that your conduct in or out of the project is grounds for your removal from the project. That principle has been established. Therefore, we can use it to get rid of everybody that we don't approve of, that we don't like. It's just a power game now. It's all up in the air. Now, it's very amusing what SQLite did, where they actually established the rule of Saint Benedict as a code of conduct. And so it's all, it's all there. Clearly, it's something that most SJWs simply cannot accept, much less even attempt to live by or be willing to live by. So, that's one example. Now, obviously, they're doing it as a way of tweaking the SJWs, and that's great. That's fine. That's awesome. They're taking the principles of Keck to new levels previously unheard of. But it points to an effective strategy against SJWs. I would establish a code of conduct that is openly and aggressively anti-SJW. If you post in favor of diversity, of tolerance, of equality, of progress on social media, or you advocate it in person, then you cannot work on the project. Period. Think about it. Right there, you're going to get rid of almost the entire SJW program. And it's fair. It's not discriminating against any protected group. It's just making it very clear that if you are a social advocate, inclusivity, I forgot that one. If you focus on that, they're not going to be a problem. They're not going to be allowed entry. And in fact, all of their efforts are going to be focused on trying to deal with that. The big thing that the tech nerds never understand is how to handle conflict, because most of them are conflict avoidant people. And so they have no idea how to handle conflict, and their strategy is always the same. Their strategy is always futile, and that is give in to the greasy wheel in the hope of avoiding conflict. Well, guess what? Everybody else knows that's the way that you handle potential conflict, and so all they have to do to get what they want is threaten you with conflict, and you will give them what they want. And then they repeat it as needed. And then you lose. So if you know that these people are going to be coming after you, and they are going to be coming after you regardless of what organization you're in, then you should at the very least provide them with an obvious channel that you can direct their energies into and let them bang their heads against the wall as long as they like. Because they're going to attack you regardless. They're going to come after you regardless. And so the question is, do you want them banging away at you, or do you want them banging away against something harmless that is not going to give way and give them access to you? This isn't that difficult. I mean, it's kind of remarkable that people who pride themselves on their intelligence and problem-solving skills are so remarkably and reliably stupid in this regard. Chad asks, direct their attack to anticipate it. Exactly. I mean, think about it. When you look at the stuff that I do and that I say, how many of those attack vectors do you think I am unaware of? Now, I'm not saying that I never make a mistake. I do. I miscalculate. I might fail to understand sensitivities. I might not I might not watch my words enough carefully. That's one reason why I've learned to stop doing interviews for the most part, just because I've gotten very, very good at anticipating the obvious problems, but I've been discovering that there are occasionally problems that can't be anticipated. I mean, you look at the Bleeding Cool situation. Who would have thought that the part owner and editor-in-chief of the entire site could be taken down and replaced, and his own work removed within 12 hours of posting an interview with me that violated the SJW narrative? The SJW narrative says that Vox is literally Hitler, a white supremacist, a bigot, a racist, a hater, etc., etc. Well, this guy goes and does a deep dive into my background, into my career, into my connections and associates, and he determines, hey, this guy really isn't a white supremacist. This guy really isn't literally Hitler. He doesn't agree with me on much, but he looked at the narrative and said, well, wait a minute, this is fake news. And he corrects it. And for that, the swarm of SJWs immediately whirled around and devoured him. Now, I wasn't surprised at all that the SJWs were not happy. I was extremely surprised that they managed to take him out so easily, so quickly. I mean, frankly, I was a little surprised that they actually dared. I thought that he had, I would have thought that he had enough influence to simply, do what he wanted. But, as we've seen, a lot of people are simply unable to withstand that sort of pressure. I don't fault the guy in the slightest. I think he's one of the few people who is more surprised than I was. But piranhas are gonna piranha. I mean, if you're a shark, don't be the first shark to get slashed in the feeding frenzy, or they're gonna eat you too. So anyhow, it's very interesting to see that there just simply are no limits. I mean, even someone like me who arguably understands the SJWs better than anybody else who is paying attention to them. I'm one of the few people who's actually analyzed them in considerable detail, and yet they they still can surprise me by their just sheer the sheer energy of their mindlessness is crazy. So anyhow, but you have to be able to anticipate what they're going to do. I mean, just because you can't perfectly anticipate every single thing they're going to do doesn't mean that you can't reliably anticipate them. That's exactly what we're doing with the upcoming Alt Hero Q campaign. We're going to be announcing it soon, probably later this week. And we are very aware of what they've done. Now, we did assume that there was a good chance they were going to go after Indiegogo. But because they had already done that, we figured that, after the first or second day of the campaign, if Indiegogo hadn't shut it down, they were going to give up, leave it alone. Well, obviously we were wrong about that. And we were also wrong about the fact that Indiegogo was dumb enough to try to cancel the campaign after it was already complete and after they already owed us the money that had been collected. Now, whether they had the right to do that or not, will be determined. We're in the very early stages of that process, and we will definitely be finding out who is in the right there. But the thing is that some of these things are going to happen. You're prepared for some of these things. We were prepared from the very start that the campaign would be canceled. So we already had the alternatives lined up. We're already preparing everything. And that's why we're going to be able to, relaunch it later in the week. But that's because we were aware of it. Somebody said, how much of Indiegogo's decision was the result of SJW pressure and how much of it was their desire to grab some money? Well, that question doesn't make sense because they lost money by doing it. They lost several $1,000s by their decision. So, Crazy Chameleon says, what are some of the other good platforms? What do you mean in case Indiegogo goes rogue? Indiegogo did go rogue. They cannot be trusted, and if it turns out that they were that their actions were actually justified, then nobody should be on Indiegogo, because if they truly have the right to do whatever they want to do at any time, even after they tell you that they're paying you, you can't possibly trust them. You'd be a fool to trust them. So, so we will be addressing some of those things, like I said, in the near future. Anyhow, getting back to the codes of conduct, a code of conduct is actually much better seen as a code of conflict, because if you show me a code of conduct, I can tell you exactly what form the conflict is going to take. It's not a surprise that it only took a matter of hours before the new Linux code of conduct was being used to support accusations of misbehavior on the part of an important figure that the SJWs want to remove. Codes of conduct are created in order to eject people from the project. And usually it's used to eject the most productive and necessary people from the project in favor of the people who are not good enough to be contributing to it. It's all ultimately the consequence of adopting any such code of conduct is inevitably going to be the eventual inability of the project to fulfill its primary goal, because that's what always happens with convergence. I know what you meant. I answered that question. Don't repeat questions, please. Yeah, once someone stabs you in the back, don't expose your spine to them again. That's true, but more importantly, once someone stabs somebody else in the back, don't assume they won't do the same to you. You know, you need people. One of the best skills that you can develop. In fact, if I were to write my 12 rules of life, probably the first one, no, not the first one, but one of the first 4 would be do your best to learn from other people's mistakes. It should not be necessary, given that you have eyes and a brain, it should not be necessary for you to have to actually make mistakes yourself in order to learn from them. Don't assume that because you're different than somebody else that you're not going to make the same mistake, or that you can get away with the same behavior without making the same mistakes. That's very seldom the case. Let me guess, they didn't uphold the threat of taking their copywritten code out of Linux, did they? Of course they didn't. That's the thing. Anytime you see people threatening stuff like that, you know they're not going to do it. You know, people make threats in order to try to get other people to change their behavior without actually doing anything themselves. If they were serious about it, they would have done it. As an example. So, let's see here. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to learn the hard way. Don't reinvent the wheel. Let's see. If I want... yeah. Don't talk about... I made it clear I don't want certain subjects to be discussed. Don't ask questions about them and don't talk about them here. It's not that fucking difficult. Let's see. If you can't figure something out, then just don't do it. Or send a private email. I don't understand why multiple people find it hard to not talk about things when there are specific instructions to not talk about them. It's not difficult. Learn some discipline. The reason that the right always loses is because we are a bunch of cowards that are afraid to do anything about anything. Well, that's largely true. You know, they call people conservatives for a reason. They are conservative about taking action. They don't want to upset the status quo. At most, they want to, threaten that sort of thing. Question: why the delay on Q? Did a platform back out? No, we haven't had anyone back out. We're just dotting our I's and crossing our T's. We also have a number of projects that are in the works. One of the reasons why I'm telling people who know what's going on to keep their mouths shut is because we have a number of projects going on. And in case you haven't noticed it, SJWs listen to what's going on and they try to figure out what's going on and then they try to disrupt it. Okay? So when you talk about things that I've told you not to talk about, you're potentially causing the disruption of the entire thing and then forcing me to come up with yet another range of solutions. So if I sound a little bit irritated about it, it's because I am. You know, nobody thinks you're being clever and smart. Nobody thinks, wow, they know something I don't. Everybody else is looking at you going, shut the hell up. Okay? And I'm not just talking about one person here. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I am trying to drive home the importance of operational security. I mean, like we were talking about before, you have to be able to anticipate the lines of attack. It's much better to it's much better to anticipate them and then direct them, because you know what they're going to do. You know what they're going to try to do, so you anticipate them and you direct them towards attacking your strong points, and you keep them away from your weak points. You know, the idea that you're not going to be attacked is ridiculous. You are going to be attacked. People are going to come after you. So you've got a choice. You know, do you want them to go somewhere that's harmless? You know, or are you dumb enough to just like hand them a wide open target and let them take you down? Are conservatives more pussies now than before? I would speculate that is the case. Possibly, but I think it was probably, I mean, the thing is that the cultural impetus now is stacked against conservatives, whereas it used to be stacked in their favor. And so I don't think it's a fair comparison. I don't think that conservatives back in the day were being tested in the same way that conservatives are now. You know, if you did everything right from the conservative perspective, you would be rewarded. Now, if you do things that are right, you will be attacked and you'll be demonized for it. And that's really, really hard when the conservative mentality is such that it seeks community approval. It seeks community status. And so, you know, I think it's more true to say, like TruthSpeak just mentioned, the fundamental problem with conservatives is that we're too independent. That's absolutely true. You know, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to work with other people and they just won't do it. You know, they're always, too many conservatives are focused with, well, I'm going to do everything myself. Okay, fine. Good luck. What's funny, though, is how many people who are determined to do it by themselves and stuff are like, hey, Vox, can you help me? Why would I help you? You didn't want, you know, I mean, Mike Cernovich actually has I do think that Mike has that same strong independent streak that most of us on the right do. But, you know, he does have a policy that I think makes a lot of sense. When someone asks him for a favor, the first thing he looks at is to see whether they've ever, you know, reviewed his books, directed people to his you know, Twitter feed, or, you know, done retweets, that kind of thing. You know, that's all valid, because if you're not willing to help someone else, what right do you have to expect anyone else to help you? You know, when we talk to, you know, we have a lot of volunteers who help out on a lot of the projects, some of them in quite, you know, important roles. And the only reason that I'm willing and able to ask them to do those things is because of the volunteering that I did for well over a decade. helping others. So, you pay it forward, you pay it back, but you have to, you always have to lead by example, whether you're trying to help others, whether you're seeking help for yourself. So, anyhow, I understand the God Emperor is speaking now, so so I would encourage you to head out and listen to that. It's certainly more important than anything I'm saying at the moment. And if you backed the Alt Hero Q campaign, I would encourage you to check your email. Have a good evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream. And hopefully you will be able, I have to figure out where this is. Hopefully you will be able to hear in both channels. So have a good evening. We'll see you at the next stream.